All right. Case 2. Oh, yes. Is it safe to go outside? I don't know. I called this Wild Wild West unarmed shootings, and I said 4, and now, actually, as of today, 5. I put on the map, so we could put 2 in Texas. There was, and they happened like boom, boom, boom. And if you've watched this before, I don't know how to say this without sounding like a cuckoo head, but if you are an academic and you've studied cognition, and if you've watched Chase Hughes on the behavior panel, he's got a whole upload on his own channel, Chase Hughes, about basically, like, is there something like brainwashing? What was learned, and for how long was it like learned and studied, and can it be enacted? Very interesting. I studied latent core beliefs, personally, of teachers, but if you study latent beliefs or beliefs that you're not really conscious of, it's not really subconscious that you can never be aware of, but it's the things that you are steeped in. Oh, this would go well with Lori Vallow, that you don't even question because it's something you've heard over and over and over in your life, to the point that it becomes part of like reality. It just is. Yes, it is this thing. You don't question it. That's what core beliefs are. Anyway, I wonder though, and if someone knows your core beliefs, a certain type of core belief person is more able to be manipulated through, think of it as like advertising. Advertising is based on this whole field of latent beliefs and psychology and motivation and how to manipulate people to do what you want them to, like buy your product. But there's other things. And now with the internet and the fact that we know that people know how people believe about things, because certain companies were gathering information specifically that somebody like a psychologist would have a hard time getting through a human rights board in an academic setting, because they'd be like, you're not telling them you're after this information, you're trying to find out surreptitiously, and you're not giving them a full awareness. Informing your participants is a moral, ethical thing that you have to do if you work with human subjects. But corporately wise, we had a bunch of companies online, and because it was a new thing, people, there hadn't been laws or regulations about how to protect people from their data being scraped and then used against them, because they were tested then. If you believe this, how will you act? If you like this, maybe we can push you this farther. What does that have to do with these shootings? Well, I wonder, when there's a rash of really odd, unusual things, if somehow people are literally, quote unquote, being triggered. And the people who would do something so horrific actually would find that hilarious. I call it Kremlin humor. And it doesn't necessarily have to be from Russia, but the type of humor where someone is doing something immorally and they name it like the exact opposite. And it's like a little touche. Like, isn't that funny? It's a double entendre. Hilarious. So, unfortunately, I can definitely see if someone were making like these broad-based manipulations online to a certain people who are clicking on things in a certain way, and they keep, giving them certain types of information feeding into a certain core belief, like fear of certain people, fear of certain situations. Does that create somebody who's more willing to go out and buy a bunch of, weapons, more willing to use them rashly without thinking, because they're being steeped in this thing? I'm just saying it is a well-studied phenomenon, and like I said, it's why you buy certain things. And if you think you're not ever manipulated by your own beliefs, I got something to tell you. Look in your pantry, look in your closet. You're buying what you're buying because you believe something about whatever, or you're not buying something because of your core beliefs. And if someone can figure that out, they know a lot about you. Anyways, what does this have to do with? Again, triggered. These are unusual, unarmed shooting cases that don't seem to have a rational, on its face explanation. And if you have an explanation or you disagree with me, put it in the comments. Let me know. I am open for argumentation. In fact, that's a whole area people study in college, in higher ed. They study, it's not just for law school, it's for higher thinking. Everybody who goes to grad school for a PhD has to be able to do argumentation, which is make your point, try to undercut the other person's point, but with evidence, not out of anger, not being nasty, not making an ad hominem attack, which is like, you're stupid. Like you attack the person, not the idea that you're talking about. So if you don't agree with my ideas, tell me why you don't agree. I would love to have that discussion. I love a good, logical, evidence-based discussion. You know, or if you want to just be crazy and yell at me and call me names, put that in the comments too, I guess. Any interaction, unfortunately, online is good interaction. Like and subscribe, right? Don't like and subscribe. Just interact. Isn't that, it's a little sad. Which is why you see a lot of people being overly dramatic when they put up their thumbnails. And their faces are like, you know, it's getting clicks means that you've probably aggravated somebody and gotten their emotion up. I try not to do that. Okay, I try to just be entertaining. One case, so the first one took place in Kansas City, Missouri, and Missouri does have a long history of having some issues. The second case took place in upstate New York, very rural area, completely different. Then there was a case in, I don't know how rural, I think it was slightly rural because it was just by the county, Gaston County, North Carolina, which I just traveled through. It's a beautiful state. And then now we have two cases that took place in Texas, one in Houston and one in Cleveland, Texas, which I believe it's somewhere on the border. So it's somewhere on that line. Okay, what do we got? So our number one case, unfortunately, is this beautiful young man, Ralph Yarl. He is 16. Let me tell you about Ralph. He plays the clarinet in the all-star band. He is an honor student in his high school, and he was doing his mom a favor by picking up his twin brothers. Sure, I'll go get them on April 13th. He, unfortunately, went to the wrong house. He was one block over. It is not clear if he, I don't know if he knocked on the door or knocked on the glass. I don't know if the glass door was shut. I don't know if he tried to knock on the door, but he thought his brothers were inside. He thought he was at the right house, and he was trying to knock on the door. He may have jiggled the glass. You know, I don't know if you've ever tried to knock on somebody's door, but when they have their storm door, and sometimes before you, like, knock on the glass and put your handprint, you might like try to open it up to knock on the actual door, especially if you think you're expected because you're picking somebody up, or if you just rang the doorbell. It's unclear, but he was on the man's porch, and this is Lester. Lester Andrew is 84 years old. I think Lester might not need to live by himself, only because, not that he's not able in other ways, but he shot twice through his glass storm door at Ralph, hitting him in the head at point blank range. He did not say anything before he did it. He did have a hearing in court. He, I believe, is out on bond, a very high bond. I think it was $500,000. I mean, they are taking this seriously. He's charged with second-degree aggravated attempted murder, I believe, and Ralph's lawyer wants it to be a hate crime. Now, I don't know what Lester Andrews' core beliefs are. He's 84. I would really want to know what media he intakes, and I would love to know his core beliefs. I mean, 84 years old. What 84 means he was born in 1938 or 39. So during World War II, he was born. I don't know what Lester thinks, what his core beliefs are, but he said to the judge that he was afraid for his life because he saw a black male on his porch. So and it's also not clear, does he always have his gun right next to him? But he shot his .32 caliber weapon without saying anything because he felt threatened because a black man had knocked on his door and was on his porch. And even if the black male had jiggled the handle to try to knock, I don't know the neighborhood, but I do know that burglars don't typically announce themselves by knocking at your door and standing on your porch. They tend to come in through windows, wait till it's night, under the cover of darkness. And shooting in the head first. Kind of a bold move. I mean, Lester was not. So I don't know what his core beliefs are. I don't know what he's been listening to. I don't know what channel of the news, maybe, that tells him he's in danger all the time. Hashtag if you know, you know. But does that make him not at fault? No. But if you are already old and vulnerable and you are being fed lies consistently through your TV set about how you're in danger, you better get a gun. They're trying to take your guns. All the theys, right? So, he obviously did something very, very wrong and should be punished. His house, but I am, as a person, am interested in knowing why he did that. And so how can we avoid that? Is something I always like to talk about. Look, don't check twice before you're going. Text the person. If you haven't been to the house before, tell them, come outside, I'm here. And I hate to be that way, especially if you're a young black male. You have to be 100 times more careful than anybody else. And that is unfair and it is wrong, but that is a reality, especially with everybody armed to the teeth and everybody being lots of messaging. And that's what his lawyer Merritt, Lee Merritt, Esquire, said. He said that, let me see exactly. Sorry, I want to tell you the lawyer's exact words because I felt it was prophetic. He said that he's pushing for this to be categorized as a hate crime because of the racial component of Mr. Lester's reasoning. And I do have Mr. Lester's exact words, which are, "I live alone and was scared to death when seeing a black male on my porch, thinking he was trying to break in." And he said just because of Ralph's blackness, an elderly homeowner was scared to death. And he did point out, and I will tell you, Ralph was in the hospital for a long time. He sustained a traumatic brain injury. He has to learn how to speak again. I don't know. I mean, he can't move just right because when you get hit on one side of your brain, one of the hemispheres, it affects both sides of your body, or one of the sides of your body usually. He's got to go through a lot of physical therapy. Not only the expense of being in the hospital for so long, they thought he was going to die. They operated. He is going to make it. It's going to be a long journey back to health. But, yeah, because of his blackness. And Mr. Merritt discussed the U.S., and I think it's in other countries, but the U.S. false narrative about black criminalization allowed to fester. And he said since emancipation, and I would say obviously since before that, since black people were seen by white people in the Americas, there has been a weird, I can't even tell you. We'll get to Lori Vallow and Bibles and what people, there has been a long history of negative connotations for black people. So when you want to say like, well, why are they so sensitive? Because this woman sent her 16-year-old to pick up her twins, and instead of, not having to drive and having an easy night, she ended up having to go to the hospital because her son almost died. So it's a concern. And I'm not unconcerned about Lester, because do you think he really believed that? Because I think he probably really did believe he was, which is sad. He was wrong. We'll talk about the castle doctrine, but I think people don't understand legally what they're entitled to do. But again, what can we learn from this? Whoever you are, don't go up to houses unless you know the people there very well. Don't just go places. Why do I say that? Well, hello. Here's our second case. Here's Kaylin Gillis. She was, and I say was because she is deceased, 20 years old. She was in rural upstate New York, around the town of Hebron. I know this because that's where they could finally get cell service, and called and got the ambulance to come to before she was DOA. Yes, Kaylin was in a car with her boyfriend Blake. They had another person with them. There was a second car following with 4 more friends. They're in their 19s, 20s. They were going to party, looking for a party. They couldn't find the address. So the sheriff of this county said, there's a lot of dirt roads and there's not very much cell coverage. People get lost all the time for all different reasons, often having to finally get cell service, and when they do, call 911 because they are lost. Like, so lost they have to call for help. So here's Kevin Monahan, who would like you to believe he is so old, he's elderly. So while I can give Lester, Andrew, a little bit more grace for being of advanced age and all the problems that comes along with that. Yeah, Kevin, I don't know what's wrong with Kevin. He's 64 years old. What he said was, after a standoff sort of with the police, these cars were going, he saw them go back and forth on a road, and then they came up very quickly on his 1/8 of a mile driveway. So he walked out and saw them, and without words, without warning, I mean, he had a no trespassing sign at the end of his, drive, which who knows if they could see it in the dark. He decided to get his shotgun, 12 gauge, shoot 2 into the car as it was leaving, because the kids pulled up and they're like, there's nobody else here. This isn't the place. Okay, turn around. As they were leaving to go, he shot into the car, killing Kaylin. Well, they were menacing him by driving back and forth on the road outside of his driveway. And then they dared to drive in to his driveway. 2 cars and a motorcycle. Of course, the first thing you do isn't, what are you doing on my property? Get the hell off my property. No, you take your shotgun and you shoot without questions. Again, how can we avoid this? Well, we can tell our children and ourselves, if we're of that age. I mean, if you're looking for a party and you're in parts unknown and you don't have cell service, yeah, you're not going to go to that party. Don't go. It's not safe. Is it worth your life? If you don't know exactly where you're going, don't go. You can't pull into driveways without being mistaken anymore, apparently. At least not Kevin's driveway. So Kevin is charged with let's see, 2nd-degree murder. He stated he felt the cars were menacing him. We will see what happens to Kevin. Of course, we get to see what happens to Kevin because he's still alive, and Kaylin now. It's just an unbelievable loss of life that didn't need to happen because someone felt disrespected, basically. Get off my property. Oh, wait, he didn't say that, though, because he didn't felt he need to. He thought it was okay just to shoot at cars. And what's he watching? What's his social media consumption look like? Studying core beliefs? I think I could tell you. And then we have Kinsley White. Kinsley White, 6-year-old. Look at that beautiful little girl. See that's on her cheek. That's where yeah, a bullet entered. You know what she did? She rolled a basketball onto her neighbor's yard when the kids were playing. Now the neighbor, I believe the neighbor is Robert. Hold on a second. Let me get to. I think this is Robert. Yes, Louis Singletary. Robert Louis Singletary. Now Robert, yeah, he's 24. I'm concerned about Robert's mental stability. Why? Well, he was known to yell at kids in the neighborhood, but typically when a ball rolls in your yard, you don't take AK-47 and indiscriminately shoot at the children, and then when the parents run to get the children, shoot at them, grazing both the mother and then hitting the father in the back, going into his major organs. He is still in the hospital. So while Kinsley, amazingly, I don't know, I think a bullet might have gone off the concrete and like grazed her that way. But yeah, her dad now, very ill in the hospital. And Robert Louis Singletary, well, come to find out, he ran, because as one does after one is a tough guy shooting at children who came onto your lawn. Gives a whole new meaning to kids, get off my lawn, doesn't it? Yeah, he ran from North Carolina to Florida. He was caught in Florida, and he turned himself in, so at least there was no problem there. But he was on bond at the time because he had tried to beat up his ex-girlfriend with a sledgehammer, as one does. Does Robert have an anger management problem? Perhaps. Does Robert maybe have some sort of schizoid personality issue? Because he's of the age. Young adults, males, like 19, 20, 24, 25, beginning of schizophrenia. And not all schizophrenics are violent, but some are, because they get paranoid and unchecked with any sort of medication or therapy can become violent. Whatever, it wasn't normal, right? I don't know what his social media consumption looks like, but because of his age and his priors of being violent, I mean, I wonder, what was he even doing out in society? And I can tell you, prior to the 80s, someone that out of control would be in the state mental hospital, and they weren't pretty, but they were funded, and they became defunded through a different way of funding through mental health with block grants instead of dedicated state hospital money. And now we have crap loads of homeless and very violent, sick people who cannot get help, and instead, but they can get guns. Can't get mental help. Can get guns. Can't even keep them in prison once they, nearly kill somebody else. It's very easy to get a gun. He was a felon. He had other felonies, priors, should not have been able to buy a firearm, but somehow did, because they're so available. And so's the ammo. And it's cheap. I mean, relatively, but. So, yeah. Hopefully her dad pulls through. He is expected to. That little girl's, she's not going to be going on anybody's lawn, right? Or probably ever playing basketball again. All right, and we have a very frightening case to anybody who's ever been tired and been in a parking lot with lots of cars that look like your car. Here we have what happened in Elgin, Texas. Oops, I was pointing to my map that no longer is there. This is Peyton, and this is her cheermate on the elite Woodland cheer squad, Heather Roth. Peyton Washington. Peyton was slated to be a Baylor College cheerleader. If you know anything about Texas sports, Baylor's a great university to be cheering at. What happened to Peyton? Well, as you can see up here, on April 18th, the same day as poor Kinsley got shot, Peyton and Heather had been with a group of two other cheerleaders who went, and they went 3 times a week from the Austin, and I believe it was the Austin Rock, hold on a second, the Austin Rockland area of Texas, Round Rock. So these girls were in a different area. They drove over 300 miles round trip. I think it was 315 miles round trip to get to near a Houston suburb where this Woodland cheer camp was. If you know cheerleaders, let's give it up for cheerleaders. Competitive cheer, if you don't think it's a sport, you don't know a competitive cheerleader, or their moms or dads or coaches. It is a very big deal, and these girls were at the top of their game, going to get very elite coaching at this cheer team. So, and they were willing to drive 3 times a week for it. It was after midnight. They were coming back from their cheer, not meeting, what do you call it? Like the practice. And Heather got out of the friend's car and got into what she thought was her car. They had met in Elgin, Texas to drive. That was like their meat place. And they met at the H-E-B supermarket. So you think a supermarket. Now, I did look at the crime statistics. It is not in the best area of Elgin. But these girls didn't. You know, they're like, this is Midway. It's a well-lit supermarket. What could happen? Well, Heather goes to get in her car and she notices, shit, somebody's in the seat. Well, who is that guy? And she like immediately, her head's like, I mean, she's tired. Again, competitive cheer. They're bouncing. They're flipping. They're doing things over and over and over again. She's tired. She gets into a car. She thinks it's hers. It's obviously open. She gets in. There's this guy sitting there. She said the first thing she thought was somebody's in my car, so she got out. And then she got back into her friend's car, and she's like, oh, crap. That's not even my car. She felt bad. The guy comes around, and she goes to roll down the window to be like, you know, she's going to be like, oh, I'm really sorry. And instead, he throws up his hands, and she realizes he's getting out a gun. And they're like, go, go. And he shoots, boom, boom, into the car. Grazes Heather. But Peyton, who's in the back and is like turning, gets shot in the back. It ruptures her spleen, which had to be taken out. It hits her pancreas, which you cannot live without a pancreas, people. She is expected to survive, but it hit her diaphragm. Diaphragm is the muscle right here, like right above your stomach, right under your stomach. And it's what helps you breathe. And she only has 1 lung from birth. So getting hit in the diaphragm, no bueno. And she starts throwing up blood. They like ran away. They thought he'd chase them. So 2 miles down the road, they're realizing nobody's behind us. Okay. And then they're like, what, Peyton? And she's throwing up blood. So they get 911 there. She gets flown with an emergency helicopter to a hospital where they can operate. Heather is just taken by ambulance. She is not hurt too bad. Thank goodness. Thank goodness. The guy. Yeah. His name, like we even care, but we do care. And it's written down where I can't see it. He is, I believe they caught him. Anyways, what can we do about this? All right. Well, you can, as a young woman or a young man, if you're going to be out late, carpooling, and you have need to leave your car somewhere, check the crime statistics in the area. Try to pick the most well-lit. There was a Walmart just down the street, and you know Walmart lets you like leave cars there. I don't know why they didn't want to go to Walmart. But we're not victim shaming or blaming. We're looking for how can this not happen. Always beep beep your car to make sure that's your car. But you know, that happens. This happens to a lot of people. Somebody got into a car that they thought was their Uber, and the person, I believe, shot them. So this is a strange thing. I believe the shooter, I think he was 24. You know, you get into cultures where there's something about respect And also, we don't know what he was doing in that car that she surprised him. Did he think she was a cop? I mean, but she's a cheerleader. I can only imagine what she was wearing. And look at her. And she's teeny tiny. So I don't know. Excuse me. This was the one who got into his car. You'd think he'd be happy, or at least not afraid. She doesn't look threatening. So I don't know what was going on in his brain that he felt, what I should be doing, even though she hopped out, was instead of wait for whoever's I'm waiting for, what I should do is go shoot at them. Was he on? You'd think he had to be on something to even have that as a thought process. But we can try to not be out late at night. We can try to make sure we beep our car. We can look in our car before we get in it. And that is what girls, women especially, but anybody late at night, you're always supposed to look. You're supposed to look under your car before you get into it. Look into the back seat. Look into the side seat. Like, don't just get into your car. It's not her fault, but how can we avoid this horrible thing? And thank goodness, Peyton is expected to make a full recovery. But unbelievably scary. All right, this is our last crazy unarmed shooter thing. So in Cleveland, Texas, there was a mass shooting last night. A family, there were 10 people in the house. I don't know who it was that went over. Our friend here, take a good look. Can you see him? Francisco Oropeza. Francisco Oropeza. He was shooting his gun off, as one does, on a Saturday night, having fun, hopefully in the air. But it was making a lot of noise. So his neighbors went to ask him if he could please stop shooting his gun outside. It was keeping their baby awake. Well, Francisco thought the answer to that wasn't to go inside and enjoy, apparently he was drunk. Enjoy some more, and I can tell you, not against having a nice drink, especially, I wasn't drinking because I was driving last night, but when you're at home, having a nice beverage, there is nothing wrong with that if you don't have a problem. I say, drink up, Francisco, but maybe not use alcohol and guns together. Maybe not an AK-15, I believe it was. Yes, Francisco thought, instead of being quiet, what I should do is go over there and shoot up the joint and see how many of them I can take out. That will solve the problem. Francisco, no bueno. Well, he killed 5 people in the house. He killed 3 women between the ages of 35 and 16, I believe, or 18, and then a 16-year-old. I think it was an unidentified person. I don't know, boy or girl. And an 8-year-old boy. Yeah, 5 of them. That'll show them. Francisco's on the run currently. As last I checked, around 4 o'clock, so it's been a couple hours. Yeah, he ran to a wooded area with his gun. I mean, I think he's sobered up by now, but he is considered armed and dangerous, obviously. Obviously, Francisco, not the best decision maker. Because now he's got, murder charges, and for the other 5, attempted murder. Not good. Not good, Francisco. The FBI law enforcement there in Cleveland, Texas says do not approach. Call 911 if you're approached by him or he's in your area. Let them know where he is. And if you have any tips, if you know Francisco and would like to, as we said back in the 80s, drop a dime. Now would be I don't even know. Are there even payphones? Is it more than a quarter? But you can call in tips to 936-653-4999. 4367. Again, to drop a dime on our friend Francisco and bring him in, maybe, without harm, go ahead and call 936-653-4367. Oh, we need a drink after that. Okay, that, my friends, was case 2.